is a 1996 Toyota Mega Cruiser, and it's the ultimate Toyota truck. Think of it as a step above the Land Cruiser, which you thought was the ultimate Toyota truck until now. This looks like a Hummer, and it was made for a similar purpose, for the Japanese military, but they made a few civilian versions too, like this one. And today I'm going to review it and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, big news, this Mega Cruiser is currently for sale, being auctioned live on Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website. This is the ideal Mega Cruiser because it's a civilian model and it's left-hand drive, which makes it easier to use here in North America. And it's already been imported to the United States with a US title. So once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to go to Cars and Bids, where you can check out the live auction for this Mega Cruiser, and you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. Alright, I'm going to start the quirks and features, the Mega Cruiser, with a quick overview of exactly what this thing is, because you probably thought you knew about Toyota trucks and suddenly you're discovering they made a Hummer. So let's talk about it. This was sold from 1995 to 2001, and it was really built entirely for the Japanese military, although there were also versions made for fire rescue services and police services, just like the Hummer and the Humvee here in the United States. However, also like the Hummer here in the United States, a small chunk of them were built for civilian, regular people to buy and drive. Sources differ, but they usually say between 130 and 150 civilian models were made out of the total 3,000 unit production run. So the Mega Cruiser is rare, and the civilian one is really rare. Now, these are just starting to become 25 years old, which makes them legal to import to the United States. So some people are starting to bring them over, mostly from Japan, which is where either all or the vast majority of Mega Cruisers were first sold. And this one has been imported, this one from Kazakhstan, and now it's here. Now, the civilian Mega Cruiser has a very interesting look to it, very similar to the Hummer. As you can see, from a lot of angles, it looks a lot like the Hummer, but the military version really looks like the military Humvee. As you can see, it was a very similar vehicle meant for a very similar purpose. And there was even a military version of the Mega Cruiser made to accommodate a missile launcher in the back, which is just cool. So apart from the fact that this is rare and special and they didn't make very many and it was never sold here, what exactly makes this cool? Let's go through it, and let's start with off-road capability, which is extensive. Like the Hummer H1, this has portal axles, which means the axles don't just go across the center of the wheels like in basically every other vehicle. Instead, they're lifted up and then connected to the wheel with a gear system, which allows for better ground clearance. And under the Mega Cruiser, you can see the axles don't line up in the center of the wheel, they're higher up, which gives this advantage. And it also requires inboard brakes. In your car, the brakes are located right at the hub of the wheel. In the Mega Cruiser, they aren't, because the portal axle assembly is there. Instead, the brakes are here, as you can see, literally on the inside. They call those inboard brakes, and they're put there in order to clear the portal axle assembly, which is crazy. But that was done for ground clearance, and it's not the only major ground clearance feature. Also, all of the drivetrain components that normally hang under a car have been moved up in the Mega Cruiser, so they're basically inside the passenger compartment, which has the effect of making this very wide. In fact, a Mega Cruiser is around 85 inches wide, which places it right up there with the Ford Raptor, and would have been massive in the mid-90s when this came out. Absolutely huge vehicle. But the result of moving those components up is more ground clearance, and you look under this thing and you can see gigantic amount of ground clearance under here. It looks like it could go over basically anything. And of course, this was made in the days before air suspension could raise up a Rivian 7 inches. So having this much ground clearance was a really big deal, especially for the Japanese military who commissioned this vehicle. Then when it comes to capabilities, the Mega Cruiser still has a lot more to discuss. All Mega Cruiser models came with four-wheel drive, of course, and with locking differentials to make them exceptional off-road. The Hummer and Humvee had that too. What the Humvee didn't have is four four-wheel steering, and the Mega Cruiser has its standard. You can see the rear wheels actually turn in the opposite direction of the front wheels to give it a tighter turning radius. You can see how this might be important on the battlefield. You're trying to escape something, quickly turn around. Four-wheel steering could help you do that, and the Mega Cruiser has it, and it's functioning just fine in this one, four-wheel steering. Now, also in terms of capability, the Mega Cruiser was offered with a central tire inflation system, just like the Hummer or Humvee, and that meant you could flip a switch inside the interior and deflate the tires automatically, which helped you off-road. And then you could flip a switch again and they would reinflate, so you never had to get out of the car and deal with an air compressor. It was a pretty cool feature, although this particular Mega Cruiser doesn't have it. Another impressive capability of the Mega Cruiser, when equipped in military spec for maximum passenger carrying, you could get 14 people in a Mega Cruiser. So you really could move a lot of troops at once, which was helped by its massive size. So those are some of the things the Mega Cruiser has, and I have to say, for those of us who are fans of Toyota trucks, 4Runners and Land Cruisers, we've always held this to be the king of the hill, the ultimate in Toyota trucks. And it's even named that way, the Land Cruiser. Well, this is the Mega Cruiser. It's rare, and it's amazing to see one in person and be around it. Now, I've already made the point that the Mega Cruiser is massive, and it really is, and that also translated to its curb weight. The Mega Cruiser weighs in around 6,300 pounds, which is huge, and was especially huge for a Japanese vehicle in the mid to late 90s. It really was a Mega Cruiser with the size and weight to back that up. So you're probably wondering, what exactly powers this vehicle? What massive V8 or V10 or big diesel is under the hood? And the answer is none of that stuff. Instead, it's a 4.1 liter turbo diesel 4-cylinder. That's right, this giant thing is powered by a 4-cylinder engine. Admittedly, a large 4-cylinder and a diesel, but a 4-cylinder nonetheless. It makes only about 150 horsepower and around 280 pound-feet of torque. It is not a very powerful engine at all in this vehicle, but that's what it has. Interestingly, the only other Toyota vehicle which shared this powertrain was the Toyota Coaster, which is this, a city bus. This engine was also used in buses, probably cruising around Tokyo for years and years with the Mega Cruiser powertrain. It was designed for low-speed driving and low-speed torque, and that's what you needed in the Coaster and in the Mega Cruiser. But anyway, next up, let's talk through Mega Cruiser quirks and features on the inside. You get into the Mega Cruiser by opening the door with this rather basic door latch, like what you'd see in some farm equipment or a commercial truck, and then you're in. And the first thing you notice in here is, just like a Hummer or a Humvee, you have two seats and a massive hump in between them. Like I mentioned earlier, this is where all the drivetrain and driveline components went. They were moved up to add ground clearance, but the result is they take up passenger space, and you have this huge hump in the interior to deal with that. That was a hallmark of the Hummer H1, and it is also true in the Mega Cruiser. Very similar vehicles and a very similar layout on the inside. But aside from the giant hump in the middle and the massive interior width, the Mega Cruiser really feels more Toyota than Hummer H1. And I say that because all the switchgear is Toyota. You have a standard Toyota steering wheel like you may have gotten on a Camry in this era. Same deal with the signal stalk. That was on every Toyota in the 90s, and the wiper stalk also. You also have a standard Toyota power window switch set, as you can see here. This would have been mounted on the door of most Toyotas in this time. Well, here they've just moved it to a more convenient location, but it's the same piece. Now, interestingly, for climate control, you have Toyota heater controls over on one side, and also a separate group of air conditioning controls on the other. The heater controls are from various Toyota models of its day. The air conditioning controls are also from a Toyota, but a much older one. They had to separate them because military Mega Cruisers only had the heater. When they did the civilian version, they added air conditioning, so they needed a separate set of controls, and that's why they're different. But back to more Toyota stuff in here, the diff lock switch you can see here in the center is the same one you had on the Toyota Land Cruiser from this era. Same with some of these other center switches. And the gear selector is exactly the same one you had on the early 80 series Land Cruiser model. Same gear selector, same operation, and in fact, it's the same transmission. It was also used in the 80 series, and it makes an appearance here in the Mega Cruiser as well. But aside from all the Toyota controls, worth pointing out that this Mega Cruiser has been modified to make it more luxurious, nicer, and just generally better. In fact, you can see the leather seats. They've been changed out, leather's been added, and you even have heated seats, which wouldn't have come standard in this vehicle, and you have that on both sides. You also have an Alcantara headliner, as you can see, to try to make it look a little nicer, more luxurious in here. There's also a lot of wood trim that's been added to the dashboard, the center console. You can see wood trim. Same deal over on the steering wheel, wood trim has been added, and there's various other pieces of wood trim throughout this interior to make it nicer, and there's even some stitching and other leather additions here or there. But the biggest modification for convenience and luxury in this Mega Cruiser was a switch to left-hand drive. All Mega Cruiser models, or virtually all, were sold in Japan, so they were sold new in right-hand drive. But some were modified later to become left-hand drive, which made them easier to use in the Middle East and Russia and places like that. And this is one of those conversions. The owner told me he thinks only maybe a dozen have been converted to left-hand drive. That obviously helps if you plan to use one here in the United States. Now, interestingly, that left-hand drive conversion involved swapping over the exterior mirrors from one side to the other because they're different. You can see the one on the driver's side looks pretty standard, mounted in the usual place, but the one on the passenger side is in this long kind of curved post, which is especially odd because you position that mirror so that you look at it through the windshield. This vehicle is so wide that you're intended to look at the passenger mirror through the windshield, which is of course like 5 feet away from you at any given time. Massive vehicle and very strange mirror placement. But on the subject of modifications to this Mega Cruiser, you also got screens in here, which can be used as TVs. You can watch DVDs as you drive along, and the driver screen can even be used as a backup camera, which is obviously very useful because this thing is massive. And next up, another interesting upgrade to this Mega Cruiser is this row of switches and buttons on the upper part of the center console. This turns on the preheating system. If you live somewhere very cold, like Russia, where a lot of these ended up, or Kazakhstan, where this came from, some people install a preheating system in their vehicles to start heating various components of the car before they get in and drive off. So they're not just incredibly cold, something that get damaged or broken. And that's the preheating system for this Mega Cruiser to kind of heat up like the engine, the windshield, whatever you might want before you drive off. And next up, we move on to the back seat of the Mega Cruiser, where you will once again see a similar layout to the Hummer H1, 2 seats back here and a massive hump in the middle for driveline components. Although one difference between this and the H1, there is far more interior room back here. In the H1, you can barely fit a normal sized person. In this, I can sit back here comfortably, no problem, head, legs, hips. It's the littlest bit tight considering the size of the vehicle, but it's totally fine. Whereas the H1, I'm sitting like this in the back seat because it's so tiny. And beyond the interior room, this particular Mega Cruiser has been equipped with some nice luxuries, including leather seats once again and heated seats once again, which is pretty impressive. And you'll notice the switchgear for the heated seat comes from a Mercedes-Benz. That was obviously a later addition, aftermarket for this vehicle. Also an aftermarket upgrade for this Mega Cruiser, TVs that come down from the roof. You press this TV button, as you can see, and TVs actually deploy from the roof so that you can sit back here and watch TV. I guess the intent was you're being chauffeured around, you can watch stuff in the back of your Mega Cruiser. But the luxury upgrades didn't stop there. This is a cradle for a satellite phone, which was installed in this Mega Cruiser. Not a cell phone, a satellite phone, so theoretically you could almost always get service. Directly next to the satellite phone, this wood panel lifts up, and you can see there's a refrigerator in here. The owner told me he doesn't know if it works, he can't find a switch to turn it on, but it's there if you want your things to be refrigerated. And the wood panel next to that lifts up and becomes a table, so rear seat passengers can sit here and eat their sandwiches on their very easily deployable table, which is nice to see. But probably the very coolest feature in the entire rear of this Mega Cruiser is on the ceiling with this little control switch group here that turns on an auxiliary climate control system that can keep the truck warm even when the engine is off. There is a second diesel motor, a small one hidden somewhere underneath the truck, and when you're trying to camp in the back of your Mega Cruiser, you turn on this system and it siphons a little bit of fuel from the fuel tank, the powertrain, to power this diesel engine, which powers a heating system for the rear of the car. And that's how you turn it on, and that's pretty cool. There's also a fan component to this run on the same diesel power that can provide a fan, not air conditioning, but better than nothing if you want to cool it down a little inside while you're trying to camp. Also worth pointing out back here, you have quite a few cup holders. In fact, 3 on each side, so 6 total rear cup holders. This was a luxury upgrade added later to this Mega Cruiser, but it's nice to have, and again, far more luxurious in the back than your standard Hummer H1. Same deal goes for the climate control vents. You don't have separate climate controls back here, but you do have vents. You can see these mounted at sort of eye or chest level, and then there are some others on the floor that'll cool down or heat up your feet and lower body. Again, just more comfort and luxury in the Mega Cruiser. And next we move on to the cargo area in the Mega Cruiser, which is also fantastic. But first, let's talk about the whole tailgate situation, starting with this trim piece here that says Toyota. This piece is the same one that Toyota used in like the 4Runner or Land Cruiser from this era. But in those vehicles, it was mounted right in the center, and then the license plate went below it, and it made sense. In this, it's kind of hilarious because it's so radically off-center because of the huge width of this vehicle and the spare tire over on the side. If I move the tire out of the way, it gives you a better idea of what I'm talking about. You have this massively wide vehicle, and sort of the license plate and tailgate latch is just positioned over to one little corner. But more to cover back here. For one thing, there is a ladder in case you want to climb to the top of your Mega Cruiser, which I suppose makes sense. You also have this mirror back here, which can help for parking. If it's angled properly, you can see the exact rear of the car and line it up in a parking space to make sure you don't run over something. But maybe the most interesting thing in back is the dual rear wipers. You have 2 wipers in back because this window is so massively wide that one wiper would only cover a little bit of it. So 2 gets the job done. Now, interestingly, you have 3 wipers on the front windshield, which serves the same purpose. That window is so wide, it also needs more wipers to get the job done, meaning the Mega Cruiser has 5 total wipers for its front and rear windows, which is something you don't often see. And one other cool Mega Cruiser item in back, you'll notice the rear bumper is split into 2 pieces with kind of a gap in the center. That's there for 2 reasons. One is towing, you can hook up a trailer to it, but also there's a little step. You pull on this little handle, as you can see, and then the step deploys, and that lets you climb onto it to get better access to the cargo area or to the roof if you need to get something off, which makes sense. But anyway, that's the rear of the Mega Cruiser. Now, let's climb into the cargo area, where you will see it is absolutely massive back here. A huge cargo area, and in this particular one, it's been outfitted with a little bed because you can camp back here. This bed perfectly sized to fit into this sort of middle cargo area space. There's even a pillow that you can lie on, and you even have a TV for the cargo area. Press this TV button on the ceiling, and then the TV deploys, and you can watch television from your bed in the cargo area of your Mega Cruiser with the heat on separately because of that auxiliary heating system I showed you. You can see the climate control vents back here that can blow heat on you while you're sleeping, even on a cool night camping in your Mega Cruiser. That is the ultimate and very cool. Now, also worth pointing out, in the back of the Mega Cruiser, you can see giant stereo equipment over on the right side. Of course, that is aftermarket. Over on the left, you have a similar hump, but that one includes a storage compartment. You can open it up and store stuff in there in the cargo area in your Mega Cruiser. So that's the rear. And one other item I want to point out back here with the Mega Cruiser, you can see this one has a Colorado license plate. The BXD20 refers to the model code for the Mega Cruiser internally at Toyota, but the cool part is this Mega Cruiser is titled here in the United States. Like I said, these are only just becoming legal to import, and this is the dream version, civilian left-hand drive with a US title already, and that makes it even more special than it already is. And by the way, since I'm outside, one other cool thing about the Mega Cruiser that is very mega is the sound of its horn. Not this whiny little horn like so many Toyotas from this era, but instead, pretty good. All right, now it's time to drive the Mega Cruiser. I am here in Denver, Colorado. I grew up here. I never thought I'd be driving a Mega Cruiser around my hometown, but I always wanted to drive one, and here we go. Now, all Mega Cruisers have an automatic transmission. Showed you the gear lever before. There were no manuals ever made, automatics only. And with this 150 horsepower turbo diesel 4-cylinder, the first thing you realize when you drive the Mega Cruiser is slow. I owned a Hummer, a 1995 Hummer, so from this same year, basically. And so I have a pretty good comparison. And this is just as slow. I'm not going to say it's slower because I don't agree with that, but it is just as slow. Now, with that said, very first thing worth pointing out, this is clearly better built than the Hummer. Just radically, massively, enormously better built than the Hummer. It just feels better. It feels more screwed together better. You have less creaking and rattling and dumb, weird sounds. And you don't have the same kind of feeling of like stuff might be having a problem like you do in the Hummer. It always kind of felt like it was a little bit coming apart. They made that better as the years went on with the Hummers. And nicer kept ones don't feel like that as much, but my earlier one did, and this doesn't. In fact, honestly, what this feels like is kind of like a Toyota truck, to be totally honest. And I say that in part because I'm looking down and feeling all this Toyota switchgear and equipment, but also because everything just works. You know, it does feel slow, but it has that sort of feeling of like diesel slow, which is you feel like you're very powerful, you just can't go very fast. People who know diesel trucks will know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, obviously the big width is a factor. It's absolutely massive. If you've driven a Hummer, you'll understand, and I suspect that a lot of people who might be interested in this will have driven a Hummer, and they want something even more esoteric, and that's this. It's huge. Now, I have to say though, in today's world, an 85-inch wide vehicle is not all that wide. A Ford Raptor is that width. Big 2500 heavy-duty trucks are that width. It's not as insane as it was back when I was a kid, and it was like, oh my God, I can't believe how massive this is. It just isn't. But that's not to say it's not still huge, because it is. It's a big, giant vehicle, and it's so weird. I just love the fact that I'm in a Hummer, but made by Toyota. It's like every off-roader's dream, and here it is. Now, in terms of visibility, you do have pretty good sight lines in this car. I mean, it's boxy and it's got a lot of windows, although the tire takes up some space behind you, so you don't really have good visibility out to your passenger side and back. And it's just so large that like you're looking out the mirror and you really can't see that much. It's also just a regular Toyota car mirror, so you're like looking at a mirror from a Camry to try to use in this giant thing. You do have that portal axle feel. When you come to a stop, it kind of shakes back and forth. All vehicles with portal axles do that. Initially, I thought my Hummer was broken, but that's how they all are. I'm literally flooring it now. Flooring it going up a hill. And there's a Chevy Equinox just keeping pace with me behind me like it's nothing. Like this car is just slow. I mean, it's using an engine from a commercial bus. That's what it's for. I think this thing is cool. And I think the coolest thing about it is that it drives like it's not that big of a deal, which means you don't have to kind of put up with a lot of crap when you're driving it. It's slow, but other than that, it drives fairly regularly. I think the cool thing is you have this like very weird, esoteric, totally underground, unknown vehicle, but also it kind of is fairly normal to operate. It's a reliable Toyota. The owner told me a lot of parts, especially running gear parts, are still available, so that's not really a huge concern. And then it, you know, on the road, it's pretty normal, but you still have one of the craziest and most bizarre SUVs of all time. And for the people who know, this is one of the most special cars, and I am obsessed with it, and I think it is so neat, and it is so slow. Oh, wow. But what a vehicle. What a crazy, crazy vehicle, and what a thrill to be able to check out the world-famous Mega Cruiser, especially a civilian left-hand drive model, the kind of dream version. And so that's the Toyota Mega Cruiser. This is absolutely amazing. I have always wanted to get up close with a Mega Cruiser, and I'm thrilled that I finally have. And if you want Hummer capabilities with Toyota reliability in one of the ultimate SUVs ever made, this is it. And you can buy it live on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the Mega Cruiser a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 51 out of 100, which places the Mega Cruiser here ahead of all the other big old massive SUVs I've ever reviewed. This is especially notable because it's several points ahead of the Hummer H1 Alpha, and I stand by that, I really do. From a former full-size Hummer owner, I must say that the Mega Cruiser is just better. It's like a Hummer, but more comfortable, more maneuverable, and simply a better feeling of quality and overall design. It's a shame the Mega Cruiser is so rare that it's mostly just an expensive curiosity, because it'd be amazing on off-road trails.